The forest was quiet that night. Only the sound of wind passing through the tall red trees could be heard. Jack, a human engineer, was fixing his drone scanner near his small cabin on planet Reliant 6. He had been living alone for many months. Away from the noise of crowded star bases and people, he liked the silence, the calm, the peaceful life he built with his hands. But that silence was suddenly broken. A loud boom echoed from the mountains, so powerful that it shook the ground under Jack's boots. He turned around and saw a trail of smoke rising from the far side of the forest. Something big had crashed, and it wasn't natural. Grabbing his emergency pack, Jack climbed onto his hoverbike and rode toward the smoke. The trees became denser, and strange bird-like creatures flew away as the sound of fire cracked through the woods. After 10 minutes, he found a wrecked escape pod, half buried into the ground. Fire flickering from its broken engine. The hull was made of alien metal, curved and glowing faintly blue. It wasn't human, and it wasn't any known ship from the nearby sectors. Jack carefully moved closer, scanning for radiation or signs of life. Inside the cracked pod window, he saw movement, a figure, small and curled up, shivering under a half-burned seat. It was a girl, but not human. She had pale purple skin, glowing silver hair, and delicate lines running along her arms like circuits. She looked young, maybe in her late teens by human standards. Her eyes slowly opened, wide and filled with fear. Jack raised his hands slowly, showing he had no weapon. "It's okay," he said softly, even though he knew she probably didn't understand him. He opened the pod's door and helped her out, her body shaking from the cold air. She was soaked in a strange blue liquid. Maybe stasis gel, maybe coolant. Her thin dress clung to her body, and she was clearly freezing. Jack didn't think much. He reached into his pack and pulled out a large towel. He handed it to her with a calm smile. "Here, you need this," he said. The girl looked at the towel like it was a holy object. Her hands trembled as she touched it, eyes wide in disbelief. Then, to Jack's surprise, she dropped to her knees and lowered her head. She pressed the towel to her chest and whispered something in her alien tongue. Jack blinked, confused. "It's just a towel," he said, scratching his head, but she wasn't listening. Tears fell from her eyes as she hugged the towel tightly, her shoulders shaking. Jack didn't know what was going on, but he could feel it was something important. Not wanting to stay in the open, Jack helped her to his bike. She was weak, but she nodded and followed him. They returned to his cabin, where he gave her a blanket and hot tea. She sat on the floor near the fire, still holding the towel like it was treasure. She didn't speak, just watched Jack with wide, alert eyes. He could see that she was scared, but trying to be brave. He brought her a translator device, something he had used with other alien travelers before. He pointed at himself and said, "Jack," then pointed at her, asking gently, "You?" She hesitated, then tapped her chest and said something soft. The translator blinked, then said in a robotic voice, "Lorene." Jack smiled. "Lorene, okay, nice to meet you." She looked surprised, like his words meant something big. She bowed her head again and repeated, "Jack," very slowly, trying to copy him. That night, Jack sat near the window, looking at the stars. What had he just found? Who was this girl? Why did she react like that to a simple towel? And what was she running from? As he looked back at her, sleeping peacefully with the towel still clutched in her hands, he knew this was not a normal crash rescue. Something deeper was happening, and he had just stepped into a story much larger than himself. The silence had returned, but this time it felt different. Something sacred had been awakened. And it had all started with a single act of kindness, a towel. Jack didn't understand it yet, but soon the galaxy would remember the moment a human handed an alien girl a towel, and how that moment changed everything. Jack woke up early. The sun just rising over the purple mountains of Reliance 6. The smell of old wood and fire still lingered in the cabin. He glanced over at the couch where Lorene was sleeping. She had wrapped herself tightly in the towel, even though he had given her a soft blanket. It made no sense. Why was a towel so important to her? Jack had seen many aliens before, traded parts, shared tools, even helped one deliver a baby. But nothing had prepared him for this. Lorene slowly opened her eyes and sat up. When she saw Jack watching her, she lowered her head respectfully. Then she carefully folded the towel and placed it in front of her like an offering gift. She said softly, her accent thick, but her voice clear. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Gift." She nodded, placing her hand on the towel, then pointing to her heart. "Bond," she added. Then looked away shyly. Jack scratched his head again. He turned on the translator device and tried to ask, "Why is the towel so special?" Lorene didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached into the pouch she had tied to her dress. She pulled out a small, glowing cube. It hovered above her palm and displayed a hologram, ancient drawings, and alien script. The image showed two figures, one giving the other a cloth. The second figure kneeled, and their bodies glowed with light. Above them appeared a symbol that looked like two stars joining into one. Lorene touched the symbol, then touched her chest, then Jack's. The translator blinked. "Life oath," it said. Jack froze. "Wait, are you saying I married you?" Lorene looked confused, but nodded slowly. Jack stood up and backed away a little. "Whoa, hold on. I just gave you a towel, not a ring." Lorene looked hurt. She picked up the towel again and held it close. "No reject," she said. "Please, Jack." Sat down, feeling a wave of guilt. He hadn't meant to offend her, maybe in her culture. This act meant something powerful, something sacred, and now he had accidentally triggered it. He opened his datapad and started searching alien archives. Luckily, he had downloaded several cultural databases from the nearest space hub. After an hour of searching, he found something close, a race called the Reilly, known for being secretive. And ruled by a matriarchal system, they were rare, almost forgotten after the last galactic war. Their old traditions were based on touch and offering. One passage caught Jack's attention. If a Reilly maiden receives a warm cloth during vulnerability, it is taken as the highest vow or life union. Jack looked at Lorene, who was now carefully cleaning the towel with a bowl of water. She was treating it like treasure, like a sacred relic. He sighed deeply. "This is a mess," he whispered to himself. Later that day, Jack tried to explain. He showed her human marriage customs rings. Words, families. Lorene listened carefully. Then showed him more from her hologram. It displayed a glowing symbol again, this time pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. The translator spoke again to souls. Joined in moment of mercy. Become eternal guardians. Jack didn't know what to say. He hadn't meant for any of this to happen. But Lorene wasn't angry. She was just calm, peaceful, like she trusted him that evening. They sat outside under the stars. The twin moons of Reliance 6 floated above them. Lighting the sky with silver light, Lorene spoke again, slowly. "I wait for long." Hiding, Jack looked at her. Hiding from what? Lorene looked up, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Hunters," she whispered. Jack sat straight. "Someone's after you." She nodded. "Bad ones. Want blood? Royal blood." Jack blinked. "Royal." She hesitated, then tapped her neck, revealing a small glowing tattoo hidden under her skin. The translator beeped and translated the symbol, "Daughter of the Star." Queen Jack stared at her. "You're a princess." She looked away, ashamed. No power now, only run. Suddenly, everything started making sense. The escape pod. The secret identity. The sacred tradition. She wasn't just any alien girl. She was a royal fugitive, and he had just become her protector by accident, or maybe by fate. He looked at the towel again, now hanging beside the door to dry. Not just a towel anymore. To Lorene, it was a bond, a vow, a shield, and to Jack, it was the beginning of something he couldn't understand yet, but deep inside, he knew this wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. This was a story the galaxy would remember. One towel, one act of kindness, and one girl who called him her bond. The stars above blinked softly, as if watching, waiting, and smiling at the strange path that had just begun. The wind howled outside as Jack stared at the alien pod wreckage behind his cabin. It had been 2 days since he brought Lorene back, and things were getting stranger. Every time he looked at her, he saw more than just a lost girl. He saw someone carrying a deep, silent burden. That morning, she had gone quiet, sitting cross-legged in front of the fire. Holding her cube, something was bothering her, something she hadn't shared yet. Jack decided it was time to learn more. While Lorene rested, Jack walked out to the crash site with a scanner and a portable decoder. The pod was half melted, its core leaking faint radiation. But one panel inside was still working, just barely. He connected his decoder to the pod's interface and waited. The screen flashed with strange alien symbols, then slowly converted into readable text. Jack's heart skipped a beat. The file was labeled Genetic KEY Last Royal Escape Protocol. What the hell? He muttered as the file opened. Jack's eyes scanned the translation, line by line. It was a message left for anyone who might find the pedant. It explained everything. This vessel contains one survivor of the Royal House of Riley. If this reaches you, know that our world is lost. She carries the genetic key to our people's resurrection. Her protector is chosen by the ritual of mercy. He offers warmth. The bond is sealed. Jack froze. He whispered to himself, I gave her a towel. That counts. The next part made his blood run cold. To break the bond means death for her. The bond is life-threaded, a sacred imprint. The protector cannot run, and the chosen cannot survive without him. Jack sat down on a fallen log, staring at the message. He hadn't just comforted an alien girl, he had unknowingly saved her life and tied his own to hers. She's alive because of me. And now she depends on me to stay that way, he said softly. Suddenly, Jack heard a soft rustling. He turned and saw Lorene standing nearby. Her eyes full of worry, she had followed him silently. Wrapped in a blanket, she looked at the pod. Then at the decoder screen. You know now, she said slowly. Jack nodded. Yeah, I do. Lorene stepped forward, placing a hand on the pod. Her voice trembled. This. All my family, gone. Jack lowered his head. I'm sorry, he whispered. Lorene looked at him, her voice a little stronger. You saved me. With cloth, she said. Jack gave a weak smile. It was just a towel. She shook her head. No, not just. In my people, towel mean promise, mean soul connection. Jack stood up and sighed. I didn't know. I never meant to trap you in anything. Lorene smiled softly. Not trap. You. Kind. They walked back together to the cabin. Silence between them filled with understanding. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, looking at the stars again, wondering what would happen now. Suddenly, his radar console beeped something. Was approaching the planet. He rushed to check it, heart pounding. A small stealth ship had entered orbit, broadcasting a signal with strange encrypted tones, not from any human faction. Not even standard trader codes. He checked the transmission logs, and a chill went down his spine. It was scanning for the Riley escape pod signature. Someone had found them. He ran to Lorene, who was already sitting up. Alert. They're here, aren't they? She asked without the translator. Jack nodded. Can you fight? he asked. She hesitated, then opened the cube, tapping a hidden panel. The cube unfolded into a bracelet, which she snapped onto her wrist. Lines of light ran up her arm, and her eyes glowed faintly. "I can protect, but not alone," she said. Jack didn't wait. He grabbed his energy rifle and emergency shield pack. He looked at her and said, "Then we protect each other." Lorene stared at him, tears filling her eyes again. No human ever say that. "Not to me." Outside, the stars grew brighter as the stealth ship prepared to land. Jack and Lorene stood side by side, ready for whatever came. He didn't know what the future held, or if they'd survive the next day. But something inside him had changed. He was no longer just a man hiding in the forest. He was now a protector of a forgotten people, and she was no longer a lost girl. She was the key to something far greater than either of them understood. All because of a towel and a quiet act of kindness that started a legend. Asterisk, the ship landed just before dawn, its engines humming low like a hungry beast from the cabin window. Jack saw the shadowy vessel settle near the crash site. Its black hull was shaped like a claw, covered in glowing red symbols Jack didn't recognize. Lorene stood beside him, quiet but shaking. Not with fear, but rage. "They are here for me," she whispered. Jack loaded his rifle and strapped on his body armor. "I figured as much," he said, "but they're not taking you." Lorene nodded, then stepped outside. Her bracelet glowed brighter, forming faint lines of energy along her arm. Jack followed her, the cold morning air biting his face. Birds had already flown away, and the forest was deadly quiet. As they neared the pod wreckage, figures emerged from the ship, 3 of them. Tall, armored, and silent, each one wearing a black helmet with a single red visor line. One raised a hand and spoke through a loud mechanical voice. "Surrender the royal blood, human, and you will live." Jack raised his rifle. "Not gonna happen," he replied. The lead hunter took a step forward. "Then you die with her," before Jack could fire. Lorene moved, fast like lightning. She launched into the air, energy wings forming behind her for a moment, with a wave of her arm. A bolt of blue light slammed into one of the hunters, sending him flying into a tree. The others responded fast. Raising plasma rifles and shooting at her, Lorene twisted midair. Dodging the blasts with incredible speed, Jack ducked behind a rock and returned fire, trying to draw their attention. One shot grazed his shoulder, burning through his armor. "Damn," he growled. Gripping his arm, Lorene landed in front of him, hands glowing. "You hurt?" she asked quickly. "Just a scratch." Jack lied. She touched his arm, and energy flowed from her hand into his wound, sealing it with light. The lead hunter charged, blade in hand. Jack stood up and blocked him with his shield, buying Lorene a second to strike. She unleashed a shockwave that sent all the hunters tumbling back. They groaned, struggling to rise. Lorene's eyes were glowing bright now, her whole body covered in blue light. Jack had never seen anything like it. "You're amazing," he whispered. She looked at him with a soft smile. "You gave Tal, I give life," she said. The remaining 2 hunters regrouped and launched small drones that flew fast toward them. Jack shot down one, but the other made it through. It wrapped around Lorene's leg and began sending electric pulses. She screamed and dropped to one knee. Without thinking, Jack ran forward, ripping the drone off her and smashing it with his rifle. Then he turned and fired his last grenade round into the nearest hunter's chest. The explosion echoed through the forest, and the enemy fell. Defeated, only the lead hunter remained, wounded but furious. He tossed his broken helmet aside, revealing a scarred, gray-skinned face. "Do you know what she is? Human?" he hissed. Jack raised his weapon again. "Yeah," he said. "She's someone worth fighting for." The hunter charged, faster than expected, and slammed into Jack. They rolled on the ground, weapons clashing. Fists flying, Jack tried to hold his ground, but the alien was stronger. Just as the hunter raised his blade to finish him, a soft voice spoke. Enough. It was Lorraine. Standing behind the hunter with her hands glowing white, she pressed her palms together, and a surge of light shot into the sky. The hunter looked up, distracted. Jack used that second to slam his rifle into the hunter's face, knocking him out cold. Silence returned once more. Birds slowly returned to the trees, and the light of morning warmed the scene. Lorraine walked over to Jack, helped him up, and gently touched his face. "You protect me, I protect you," she said again. This time, with more strength in her voice, Jack smiled, breathing heavily. "Remind me never to mess with you." She tilted her head. "Mess." He laughed softly. "Means you're scary." But in a good way. Back at the cabin, Jack patched up his wounds, while Lorraine meditated, regaining her energy. They had survived, but Jack knew this was only the beginning. Whoever sent those hunters wouldn't stop. They would send more, stronger, faster, maybe even fleets. But Jack wasn't afraid anymore. He had seen what Lorraine could do, and he had made his choice. He wasn't going to abandon her. Not now, not ever. He watched her from the window, her skin glowing faintly in the fading morning light. She was a warrior, a royal, and something more. As Bond, he didn't care what the galaxy thought. He was ready to stand beside her. They had faced death, and they had won together. And now, the galaxy would soon learn what it meant to threaten a girl who was given a towel by a human. A towel that became a promise that became war. The stars above Reliance 6 were quiet again. The shipwreck had been cleared. The enemy hunters defeated, and the forest returned to peace. But inside the cabin, everything had changed. Jack no longer saw Lorraine as just a survivor, or even a princess. She had become something more, not a stranger, but someone his soul now recognized. She moved with grace, still weak from the battle, but calm. Jack noticed how she always kept the towel folded neatly near her bedside. It wasn't just cloth to hurt. It was a symbol. A promise he still didn't fully understand, but one that bound them both. That night, the fire crackled softly, and Lorraine sat beside it, her glowing bracelet resting on her lap. Jack brought her a cup of warm tea, made from local herbs. She took it with both hands and smiled gently. "Good," she said, sipping slowly. Jack nodded. "You're learning fast." Lorraine tapped the side of her head. "Your words." "Easy now?" She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. "Because your mind is near mine." Jack tilted his head. "Wait, what do you mean?" She placed her palm over her heart, then moved it slowly to his chest. "Bond. Not just symbol. It's real." He felt warmth where she touched him. Not just physical, but something deeper. "Are you saying we're linked?" He asked. Lorraine nodded. "Yes, spirit link. Bikini really way." Jack leaned back, trying to process it. "So that's why you can speak faster, and why I feel weird sometimes. Like I'm hearing your thoughts." She nodded again. "Not thoughts. Feelings," she corrected. "I feel you, and you feel me." He laughed nervously. "Well, that's new." Lorraine smiled softly. "Not bad new," she said. Then grew quiet. She looked into the fire, her voice soft. "Do you feel safe with me?" Jack answered without thinking. "Yes." Later that evening, Lorraine showed him more of her cube. This time, she activated an old memory image of her family. A tall alien queen with silver robes and sharp eyes stood behind a throne. Beside her, a younger version of Lorraine laughed with two other girls. "They are my sisters," she said slowly. "Both gone now." Jack put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry." Lorraine didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered like she wanted to. She leaned closer and whispered, "You are not like other humans, Jack. Blinked. What do you mean? Others want power, control, they take. Hey. What they don't understand, she looked up at him. But you gave. He smiled a little. It was just a towel. Lorene shook her head. It was everything. The room went quiet again, but the silence felt warm. Not empty, not lonely, but full of meaning. Jack looked at his arm and noticed something strange. Tiny blue lines had started to glow under his skin. They looked like her skin, beautiful, alive, a Lorene, he said, pointing at his arm. She walked over and touched it gently. Yes, the bond grows. Jack frowned. Is that dangerous? She shook her head. Not if you accept it. He looked into her eyes. And if I don't? She paused. Then, I die. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The bond was deeper than he imagined, more than emotional, more than spiritual. It was biological, maybe even written in their DNA, so there's no going back, he said. Lorene nodded slowly. But, do you want to go back? He didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, he stood, walked to the window, and looked up at the stars. All his life, he had dreamed of space, of purpose, of meaning, and now, somehow, this alien girl had brought all of it crashing into his world. He turned back to her. No, he said, I don't want to go back. Lorene smiled. Her eyes brighter than ever, she stepped forward and gently took his hand. Together, they sat again near the fire, fingers interlocked, hearts quiet, but steady. They didn't need more words. The next day, Jack tested some of his old tech. Strangely, he found his reflexes sharper, his senses quicker. He could see details he had never noticed before. And his mind worked faster. Lorene explained that the bond worked both ways. His body was adapting. He was becoming something more, not fully really, but no longer fully human either. She called him H-Kareen, a word that meant chosen flame in her language. Jack laughed. I sound like a fantasy book hero, but Lorene only smiled. To me, you are that. Night, as they stood outside watching the moons rise together. Lorene leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. I don't feel alone anymore, she said. Jack put his arm around her. Neither do I. The bond had deepened, not just by fate, but by choice. And whatever came next, they would face it together. 2 lives, 1 link. All because one human gave a towel, and one alien girl gave her heart. Asterisk. The sun had just set when Lorene stood at the edge of the glowing cliff. Behind her, the trees swayed. Quietly, and ahead, the mountains opened like a secret. Jack followed her, carrying only a flashlight and a backup power cell. This is it, he asked, watching the rocks shift to reveal a hidden doorway in the cliff face. Lorene nodded slowly, her face serious. The trial waits inside, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What kind of trial? Jack asked, his hand on his weapon. She turned to him. Not a battle. Not with guns, but with heart. The entrance shimmered as they stepped inside. Blue light ran across the stone walls like flowing water. It was ancient, untouched by time, and humming with power. Symbols glowed beneath their feet. Responding to their presence, Lorene stopped in front of a large metal door with alien carvings. She looked at Jack, placing her hand on his chest. This place was built by my ancestors. To test those who protect the royal line, Jack raised an eyebrow. You mean me? She nodded. Only those who pass are worthy of the bond. Jack took a deep breath. He didn't want to fail. Not for himself, but for her. What do I have to do? He asked. Lorene stepped back as the door opened, revealing a circular chamber filled with glowing mist. You enter alone, she said softly. Jack hesitated, then nodded. I'll be back, he said, and walked through. The door closed behind him with a low hum. Inside, the mist swirled and formed shapes. Jack saw his own reflection in the air. Then the images changed. He saw Earth burning, soldiers falling, the people he loved crying out, "No. That's not real," he whispered. A voice echoed in the chamber. Not male or female, but both. Fear is the first wall. Will you run from it? Jack clenched his fists. No. The images faded, replaced by something else. Now he saw himself standing before a throne, wearing strange armor. Lorene knelt before him, silent, waiting. The voice returned. You are offered power, control, the throne of a lost race. Do you take it? Jack stared at the vision, tempted, but he shook his head. I didn't save her to rule. I saved her because it was right. The throne turned to ash, and the room changed again. Now he stood in the cabin, alone. No Lorene, no towel, no bond. The silence was deep and cold. Last trial. The world without her. Can you live with that? Jack fell to his knees, feeling the emptiness cut into him. He whispered, No. I don't want a world without her. The mist turned. Gold surrounding him with warmth. The voice spoke one last time. You have passed. Not because of strength, but because of choice. A circle of light appeared under Jack, lifting him gently into the air. Symbols wrapped around his arms and chest, burning with soft blue fire. When he landed, the door opened again, and Lorene rushed to him. Jack, she cried, catching him before he fell. He smiled weakly. Still alive, she helped him stand. Staring at the glowing marks now etched into his skin, you passed. No human ever passed this trial. Jack leaned on her. Guess I'm not just human anymore. They walked out together into the night. The stars brighter than ever as they stood on the cliff's edge. The ancient doorway closed behind them. Jack looked at his hands, now marked by the trial. What does this mean? He asked. Lorene took his hand and placed it over her heart. It means you are now keeper of the bond and protector of my people. Jack laughed softly. I'm just a mechanic, Lorene. She shook her head. You're more. You became what legends talk about. Suddenly, a beacon lit up in the sky. Jack's communicator buzzed an old human signal. He opened it and heard a message crackle through. Jack Morrison. This is Earth Command. We've received unusual activity in your zone. Bond immediately. Jack looked at Lorene. They're coming, he said. She nodded. The galaxy is watching now. But Jack wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had passed the trial, not with weapons or strength, but with heart. And he wasn't just protecting Lorene. Now he was standing for something bigger. Something ancient, sacred, and full of light. They turned to face the stars, their bond unbroken. Whatever storm was coming, they would meet it side by side. The protector and the princess, chosen not by blood, but by choice. The sky above Reliant 6 was no longer quiet. Ships filled the stars, some human, some alien, all drawn to the signal Jack unknowingly triggered from the balcony of the ancient mountain temple. Jack stood beside Lorene. Below them, campfires. An outpost lit up across the valley where soldiers and diplomats waited. But no one dared to make the first move. Jack watched the hologram display floating in front of him. It showed 3 fleets Earth Command, the union of alien houses, and something new, a mix of old, Riley ships sent from hidden moons, answering a signal they thought lost forever. They are waiting for you to speak, Lorene said softly. Jack looked down at his hands, still glowing faintly with the marks of the trial. I'm not a leader, he said. Lorene shook her head. You're more than that now. You're the bonded one. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and activated the beacon for public transmission across the fleets. Every screen lit up with Jack's face. Standing beside the last Riley princess, he spoke slowly, clearly, with no pride and no fear. My name is Jack Morrison, a mechanic, a survivor. And now, protector of a life that was nearly forgotten. He looked at Lorraine, who nodded for him to continue. War brought her people down, fear kept them in hiding, and ignorance nearly erased their legacy. The fleets listened in silence. But I didn't save her because she was royal or powerful. Jack continued. I gave her a towel. A small act of kindness because she was cold and alone. He paused, letting the moment settle. That one moment changed everything. Back in the cabin, he had been alone, broken by a past he never talked about. Now he stood before the galaxy, carrying the hope of a people that once ruled the stars. Peace doesn't come from weapons, he said. It comes from understanding. Lorraine stepped forward next, her translator device glowing at her throat. I am Lorraine, daughter of the last Star Queen, she said, her voice steady and royal. I once ran from this galaxy, afraid of what it became, but I return now, not to reclaim a throne, but to restore balance across the three fleets. Murmurs and signals were exchanged. Then, the leader of Earth's command appeared on the screen. Admiral Ruiz, a stern woman with sharp eyes, stared at Jack. You're asking us to trust an ancient race that vanished, and a man who left the cores, she said. Jack nodded. Yes. The Union of Alien Houses sent their message next. A tall insectoid diplomat clicked his mandibles and translated, if the bond is real and the trial was passed, we cannot deny its power. Then came a surprise. An old Riley commander, long thought lost, stepped forward. He saluted Lorraine and said, the flame has returned. We are with you. Peace didn't arrive with a bang, but with silence, a shared breath, a shared understanding. The three fleets lowered weapons, and a new channel was opened, not for war, but for rebuilding. Later that night, back at the temple, Lorraine and Jack stood alone under the stars. The beacon was quiet now, its job done. Did you ever imagine this? Jack asked. Lorraine smiled. No. But I hoped. He laughed gently. You know, I still can't believe all this started with a towel. She looked up at him. To you, small thing. To me, it was the world. They walked to the edge of the temple, where the stars reflected. In a still lake below, Lorraine reached into her robe and pulled out the old towel. It was faded, but clean and still warm from her touch. She placed it in his hands and whispered, now, you give it again. Jack stared at her, confused. She nodded. New tradition. For new bond, he smiled, knelt down playfully, and offered it back. She took it with a quiet laugh, tears forming in her eyes. That means forever, she said. He stood, pulled her close, and whispered, then forever it is, from that day forward. The tale of the mechanic and the alien girl was passed across the galaxy, told in different languages, on different worlds. In many ways, some called it legend, some called it prophecy. But everyone remembered the heart of the story, how peace began with a towel, a bond, a choice, and the courage to protect it. And high in the mountains of Reliance 6, where stars burn bright and winds sing through the trees, a human and an alien watched the universe change together, not as ruler and subject, not as alien and human, but as two hearts, forever linked by a moment of kindness and a new peace that would echo for generations.